welcome to another episode of You and Me and Multiple Sclerosis. Well, a little while ago, I told you that I had signed up for a clinical trial, and last Tuesday, the 15th of March, was my first of 4 appointments to participate in the trial. And I traveled down to Oregon Health and Science University in Portland, Oregon. For that, my husband kindly drove me. And I'm sure glad he did, because I don't think I could have gotten there well on my own. City driving is not my thing. It wasn't even before I gave up driving, but it certainly wouldn't have been my choice this time. But it was definitely worth it, because what this visit was for was to establish a baseline for my condition, so that when they start doing the actual trial, they have something to compare it to. And let me tell you what was involved in that. But first, Dr. Radav, who is the lead investigator on this study. Here is Dr. Yadav's page at OHSU so that you could check that out too. I'll put the link below. As you can see, she's very well qualified. Her special focus is on multiple sclerosis and neuroimmunology. She's often involved in research projects. And as a physician, she gets a 4.8 out of 5-star rating from the 158 ratings that were left for her from patients at OHSU. And I have to tell you, she is a very engaging human being, and I really enjoyed talking with her. Perhaps the most exciting thing she said was that we already have all the tools we need to cure multiple sclerosis. We just need to integrate them into practice, which I'm sure involves a lot of clinical trials and tests to get there. But she's very convinced that we're going to be seeing a cure for multiple sclerosis in the not too distant future. And she has done other studies as well. She was involved in the alpha-lipoic study fairly recently, which I benefited from, even though I was not a participant. But for this baseline appointment, the 3 things they looked at were, number 1, I had to take questionnaires on fatigue and also questionnaires on depression, because depression, as you may know, can masquerade as fatigue, because when you're depressed, your energy is just gone somewhere. It just took a vacation. And it can look a lot like fatigue, and it can many of the same symptoms. So they wanted to be sure that I wasn't having fatigue as a result of depression, but also just getting a better feel for what the nature of my fatigue was. Is it more physical fatigue? Is it more mental fatigue? Those are important things to know, because again, they're going to be measuring kind of a before and an after. They want to know where I'm having the most trouble. So we went through those things. I also gave 2 vials of blood. They had a blood draw. And by the way, this was not a fasting blood test, but all the rest of my visits, I need to fast before I go, which means only water, not even black coffee. That's going to maybe be the hardest part of this whole study for me, is going without coffee until 11 or 12 o'clock in the day. We'll see how we do. And the last of the 3 is a neurological exam. And I have not had such a thorough neurological exam in all my years of having MS and going to neurologists, which is not to say that any part of it was different from what I've done in the past. It's just it was all done this time. We did all the basic stuff. We tested reflexes, we tested balance, we tested my ability to walk. Now that, actually, I will say, was a little bit new, because I know that I've talked about this before, the Expanded Disability Score scale or whatever, the EDSS that we are familiar with. I've never actually received the results of a test like that. I've had many neurologists tell me to walk down the hall and back. They've watched me walk and they've timed me, but they've never actually had me walk long distances to see if I could do it. And that makes a difference. If you're familiar with the scale, the first distance that they talk about is 500 meters. Can you walk 500 meters without assistance and without stopping to take a rest? Well, honestly, I hadn't really done that because I don't really know how to measure 500 meters. My house is certainly not that big. I've not really done that. Well, they had me do that, and they didn't so much as they didn't really time me as much as they just wanted to see how well I could do it. And I'm proud to say that I did. I was able to walk the whole 500 without my cane, which I wasn't sure would I'd be able to do. I was very thankful that the carpeting had kind of straight lines on it because I could follow those. I've told people that the main reason I use my cane is not so much for support, but to keep myself going in a straight line. It's interesting to realize that I actually can do pretty well without the cane if I have to, for even for 500 meters. And I suppose I could have gone longer, but I was pretty thankful when it was over. Now, if we look at the EDSS again, we can see where might have put myself before. I'm not likely to score myself there anymore because I got a data point that I didn't have before. Before I was thinking I was somewhere between a 4 and a 4.5. But as you can see from the descriptions of the different steps, I'm thinking that I'm probably somewhere 3.5 to 4.0, depending on what is meant by mild disability or moderate disability. As I've said in my earlier talk on this topic, and I'll link to that, I don't know what mild and moderate mean, and I don't know if there's a consistent definition among all practicing neurologists. But at any rate, looking at my disability score, I actually got kind of a lift from that because it answered a question that I had had for a long time. So that is probably going to be right off the bat one of the great things I get out of being in this clinical trial. Now, I'll review again a little bit about this particular clinical trial. And I could have gone out to clinicaltrials.gov, which is the website that I showed you last time we talked about this. But this time I'm going to take you out to the National Multiple Sclerosis Society's webpage, and I'll put that link below as well, because they feature this clinical trial on their site. And as you can see down here, clinical trial, antioxidant for fatigue and multiple sclerosis and other studies. So that's the page that it's on. And if I scroll down a little bit, here's the trial, antioxidant for fatigue and MS, and all types of MS are eligible to be enrolled in the trial. We're going to be using an oral supplement, and we are going to be looking at MitoQ, which is short for mitoquinone, an antioxidant, and it's something that you actually can buy right now over the counter. But one of the stipulations for the trial was that I not be taking CoQ10 or MitoQ in any form during the duration of the trial, except, of course, for the one that they're administering to me and having me take. And then, if we look down to contact name, you can see Allison Fryman's name there. She's the research coordinator, and they've got her phone number there and her email as well. Certainly, they are still recruiting. If you're interested and you're in the Portland area, or you're willing to drive a little bit, you can go ahead and give her a call and get involved. She would love to hear from you. But I just want to read to you the description of the study. The purpose of this study is to determine whether multiple sclerosis patients who receive oral mitoquinone, MitoQ, have less fatigue than those receiving a placebo. A comparison between patients' fatigue scored at baseline and fatigue scored 12 weeks after drug initiation will assess if MitoQ has a significant change in fatigue. So there you go. It's a pretty simple study. And as they said here, there is going to be a placebo group. So in other words, okay, so there are 3 groups in the study, and I won't know, of course, which group I'm in, nor will Dr. Yadav or Allison Fryman know what group I'm in. There's the group that receives a higher dose of MitoQ. There's a group that receives a lower dose of MitoQ. And the third group is the placebo group, which means there is no medication that's given to them. They are not getting the supplement. They're getting a placebo. They're getting something that looks and perhaps even tastes like the real thing, but it's not the real thing. And after 12 weeks, they're going to assess me again and see if the MitoQ has made a significant change. So all of those tests they did for me at baseline, they're going to redo them and see if they see any difference in my fatigue. And again, what they're looking at cognitive fatigue and they're looking at physical fatigue. So that's kind of where things are right now. Over the next 13 weeks, I go down 3 more times. My next visit will be at the end of this month, and then I won't be back in Portland for another month, not until early May. And I'll have another visit then, and then the final visit will be sometime in June. I've got them scheduled, but I can't remember them right off the bat. But the important thing is that this is a piece of data that they can use to determine whether this particular supplement can help people who suffer from fatigue with multiple sclerosis. And that accounts for an awful lot of us. I admit this is a very low risk study because it doesn't involve any new untested medication. It doesn't involve anything that people can't already purchase over the counter. I know that there are other studies out there where the risks are higher. Those are also incredibly valuable. Think seriously about participating in a clinical trial and benefiting, even if not yourself, others who will have MS in the future. Let me know if you have any questions about any of this. I will keep you posted on how things go and certainly on the outcome of this. But in the meantime, take good care of yourself, and I will see you again in my next video.